Oh,
In this city, Calcutta, it still hasn't become a full-blown nightmare. It might become
yeah.
one any day. But Delhi is the one where things have gone off the rails
Yes, I know. Yeah.
because we have such a wonderful government.
Yes, we're yeah, we were having the same problem until a few months ago, but in a different way. But yes,
Yeah. But these people came in with a second term.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hope everyone in your family is okay. Has been.
Immediate family, everyone's fine. There have been people who've fallen ill now and again,
Yeah,
this time, younger people.
yeah,
I lost an aunt last year, but that was in the first wave.
yeah,
She was 83 or 82, but she had diabetes and some other high blood pressure.
yeah.
Paul, everything okay at your end?
Yes, thank heavens, everything is great. So, I don't want to say too much about that because I feel very badly for the situation in India. I think we all do.
What about you, Rick?
We've been okay. I mean, we were talking with Paul earlier because he was out here last year when we were the first place in the U.S. to really get hit by it, and but
Oh, really?
yeah, the first cases and the first deaths. But the good thing, if you can call it good, was that people here really treated it seriously from the beginning, and so our politicians have been really good on it, even when our national ones weren't last year. And in general, the general in Seattle itself, the community behavior has been pretty good about
That's
taking
good.
care and all that. So yeah, people who treat
Yeah.
it seriously here. So and not given way to what's happened in some places.
When I went to the UK in October, people were towards the beginning of October. They were behaving as if nothing had happened and nothing could happen.
Right.
It was very odd.
We've never gone there. We haven't had any live audiences for anything for over a year now, and they've only most of the restaurants are outdoors or whatever. It's which is easier this time of year. I think Karen's giving the cue that we can go ahead and begin. And so it's early where you are, Amit, and it's late where Paul is. So we will, I think, should begin. To everyone who is joining us in all the places of the world that you might be joining us from, my name is Rick Simonson, and with my colleague Karen Maeda Allman at Elliott Bay Book Company in Seattle, in the U.S., where we are on Duwamish lands, and where Seattle is in the Pacific Northwest part of North America. We're delighted to have you with us, and we're delighted to have with us from Calcutta, Amit Chaduri, and with him in conversation in New York at present, Paul Muldoon. This is occasioned by the publication of Amit's newest book, which is published in the US by New York Review of Books, Finding the Raga, an improvisation on Indian music. And I count myself among the fortunate ones in the US. Amit is a writer whose work has traveled all over the world, and as a novelist, as an essayist, as a short story writer, as a poet, and as a critic, and as the author of a book, which I think the book that got him to Seattle was his book on Calcutta. But I've gotten to see him perform music, and that was over in India, in Jaipur a few years ago. So it's a pleasure to both to have him for this program and also to have read this book, which is an extraordinary book chronicling his way through for different music, the music he was exposed to growing up, both Western and home music, the Indian traditional music, and his affections and disaffections at different times, moving around with his family within India, and then also his studies and work abroad, and that kind of various literal traveling and literary traveling as well. So today, he and Paul Muldoon will talk about this music, and the book does a lot of beautiful work about music, but I think looks at other questions about art and culture and identity as well. Amit is, as I mentioned, the author of all those kinds of books. Most recently, friend of my youth, and in this book, he actually talks about his different. He will start down a direction with one kind of work and then seemingly change direction. So his work is so varied, you wouldn't always know any 2 or 3 books of his are his, but they're all distinct and brilliant and good. He has received many awards, among them the Commonwealth Writers Prize, the Betty Trask Award, the Encore Prize, the Los Angeles Times Book Award, and others. He, I think you still teach in East Anglia some of the time. I think yes. So
Some of the time.
Some of the time, yeah. But he's here with us from Calcutta, and with him today, someone else who is conversant certainly with music as well as poetry. Paul Muldoon is one of the most celebrated poets in the world, actually, in the English language, as I say, but it's even broader than that. He originally from Belfast and has lived and taught in the U.S. now for many years, teaching at Princeton. He has 14 collections of poetry, the newest of which comes this November, called Howdy Skelp, for our Strauss in the U.S. And he also has received numerous awards, the Geoffrey Faber Award, T.S. Eliot Prize, Irish Times Poetry Prize, Pulitzer Prize, Griffin Prize, many, many more. I could go on. And the Piggott Poetry Prize, we were talking about some connections to this part of the world. And he's been out here to Seattle as well, which we've been delighted to hear him when he's been here. And he's also, because we have some more technical things today going than we usually, had good advice from his BBC role of knowing how to work with sound and music, because you will get to hear some music as part of this. So I will shortly disappear. We hope you will put questions in the Q&A portal on your screen, or if it shows up in the chat, we'll Paul will read those to Amit, and when after that will be in the later part of the program, and then I will come back at the very end. But meanwhile, you are all I think, going to be totally engaged and in for quite a time here. We really appreciate both Amit Chaduri's getting up. Amit's getting up. It's 6:30 in the morning where he is, and it's getting on late for Paul where he is. It's getting to be after 9 p.m. So we thank them, and we thank all of you once again, and now ask you to please give your good attention and virtual applause to Amit Chaduri and Paul Muldoon. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rick. It's such a pleasure to be here. Elliott Bay is one of my very favorite bookstores, and it's great to be here virtually. And what a pleasure also to be here with my friend Amit Chaduri, and great to see you, Amit. We're going to focus on you today, of course, on this new book. I'm going to ask you a very basic question in my role as an innocent interlocutor. And would you mind just saying a word or two about what exactly a raga is? I know it's kind of basic, but sometimes these are the most important questions. How would you describe the raga?
As in the book, I can only describe it through negatives. By saying it's not a scale, it's not the sum total of the notes of the rag. It's not a mode. So you might know the notes of a rag, but you might not know what the rag actually is. So the rag is a particular way of descending and ascending the notes. But obviously, when I say that, I mean something more complicated than a linear ascent and a linear descent, in the sense of, because I distinguish it from being a scale. So if it's not a scale, then it doesn't just go up and down in a particular predictable way. It goes up, and as it goes up, it might avoid certain notes, which it might incorporate on the way down. The going up itself, if it is to make any sense in an exposition, will be done over a period of time, with delays in the movement upwards and then delays in the movement downwards. So that means You go up a bit, come down again, then go up a bit further, come down, go up a bit further. So I would say
I'm
it's a particular.
fascinated. I'm
Yeah, sorry.
fascinated by the fact that it may be described in terms of what it's not. And as you say that, I'm reminded of how we come to define free verse, for example. It's much easier to describe it and define it by what it doesn't do, perhaps, rather than what it does. Sounds as if this is a similar situation.
Similar situation, definitely, in the sense of what aesthetic and art intellectual developments have done to the basic tune, which one might have called a rag, and recognized for having a particular kind of integrity and, let's say, different in its movement from another tune with the same notes. So two tunes with the same notes can still be two different tunes, and similarly can be two different rags. But with the rag, I mean, the slowing down, especially in forms like the khayal and the drupad, means that we are aware of the various segments of its progression in a way that one wouldn't have ordinarily thought possible with a tune.
You know, I think rather than fascinating though it is to discuss this in the abstract, it might be better actually to listen to something. And we're hoping that you'll play some music for us. And in fact, this might be a good moment to kick off with a piece. Would you like to say a word or two by way of introduction to it?
Sure. Okay, I'm going to check if my voice is going to move at all at this point, but I'm hoping it will. So the rag I'm going to sing is a morning rag. It's morning over here. It's 6:45. So the rag is called Gujri Tori. So Gujri could be a reference to the Gujars, and it could be a reference to a folk tune, the way they sang Tori, this community called the Gujars. But then it's been subjected to what can only be called high aesthetic scrutiny as it became a rag. You know, it's like taking a folk tune and turning it into the basis of a symphony or a sonata or something like that. This is what is happening over here. Now, let me just say a couple more words about this. I'm using gadgets which we use while traveling. So this is the tanpura, the drone, the electric tanpura, which you play with strings. It's a big instrument. And I'm going to be using the electric tabla as well. Ingeniously created by people in Bangalore. This is good for people who travel a lot. Everybody uses them now. And in the pandemic, and at 6:30 in the morning, you can't have musicians come and play with you. So let me just try with Gujri Tori. San sa re ga ma da ni sa ni da ma ga re sa re ga ma da ni sa ni da ma ga re sa. So what I've sung are 6 notes. Okay, what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to sing Gujri Tori, I'm going to sing Miyaki Tori. This will be more interesting. So, San Rem is a flat second. So when I'm saying Sa Re, it's like Do Re Mi Fa So. 7 notes of music over here, of Indian music. And also corresponds here to, if my tonic is E, so E, F, etc. So tonic, flat second, flat third. Sang rem gam ma, sharp fourth, ma dam dam, flat sixth, danim seventh, sare gama dani sa ni da ma ga re sa. Notice a couple of things. sa re. So the way I go to this flat second is not da da. I go like sa re. So I'm touching the third note sa re re. Sa re ga ma sa re ga ma. When I sing the sharp fourth, I'm touching the upper note. Sa re ga ma dam. Each note is continuous with the previous one. Sa re ga ma dam. You get that? Like it's there's a glide going on, connecting one note to the other. If there was such a rag as Thodi, which there isn't, so what I'm going to sing is Miyaki Thodi. If there was such a rag, then it would go according to people who kind of tabulate these things. Sa re ga ma pa pa da ni da pa ma ga re sa. So we would have the fifth come in that way. Sa re ga ma pa da ni da pa ma ga re sa. That's how it would go. But we don't have such a rag. It doesn't exist. What does exist, the closest to it, is Miyaki Tori. Miyaki Tori it goes like this. Sa re re ga ma da 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 ni da ma ma da pa pa. Now you see that it's gone up to the flat sixth, to the seventh, to the flat sixth, and then come back and it touches the fifth for a little while, and then it goes back to the other notes. This is very odd because in a usual kind of normal musical system, the fifth is an interval. So you would aim straight for the fifth, go there and rest there. Over here, the fifth is being avoided and only touched upon glancingly. So let me just sing a short composition, keep it short, in Miyaki Tori. Mia refers to Tansen, great singer, who apparently made this modulation. Not true. He made some modulations, but some of these are apocryphal. So it's a 10-beat cycle. This is the cycle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1. And it's called Jhaptal. And the way it goes is like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1. That's how it's divided. Amato sharanam torire da daya karo re da daya karo re daya karo re daya karo re da daya karo karo daya karo re karo re dam dam ta daya karo re dam dayam karo re mere dam karo re karam That's the elusive fifth. I think I'll stop it there. Just a taste of it.
What a privilege. I mean, I'm reminded of reading a poem or a play, you know, the text of which occupies the top third of the page and the commentary or the footnotes. No, it occupy the bottom 2/3. It's lovely. I mean, that's so what a privilege. Now, tell me this. I have so many questions to ask you. I mean, you learned so many of these songs at your mother's knee? Did she teach in the way that you've just been instructing us?
No, I mean, actually, I never. When I was at my mother's knee, I was busy running away from my mother. I actually didn't learn very much from her. And I was a very poor student in school, a poor pupil. Anything that required hard work, you know, I avoided. So my mother did try to teach me the Tagore song, which is what she was really a great, I mean, I don't use that word in a teenage way, a great exponent of. But because it was my mother, I didn't take it seriously. I was growing up. Soon I'd be listening to The Who. I was not interested in listening to Tagore songs, etc. So I remember actually getting up and running. I have that memory. You know, she's trying to get me to sit down and learn a Tagore song, and I get up and run, you know, after a little while. And so that's what it was like, yeah.
I have misunderstood the history there. You know, we'll have time for some questions later on, of course, but since it arises naturally in conversation, as it were, there is a question here from John Scalen. What is the history of ragas? But actually, going to the nub, going back to Rabindranath Tagore or before, that's a question is that a question that means anything to you?
Does the history of ragas does it go back beyond
before Tagore? Was that particular question?
It goes back, you know, I mean, Bharat's Natya Shastra mentions ragas. It goes back millennia, I mean, to BC. I have the dates over there in the book, but I don't want to sort of get it wrong. Say 2nd century or 3rd century, you know. Well, it's 4th century, but whatever. But anyway, it's common knowledge, but it goes back a long time. But the way you're hearing it now, what I just sang for you, I mean, it would have been there in different forms, different genres, but the kind of treatment, and the expansion of which you heard only a tiny bit. I mean, basically, even the tempo at which I was singing, 1, 2, 3, 4, could be slowed down to 1, 2, and even slower than that. That goes back to the 30s, I think. You know, it's a modernist evolution. It really is connected to spiritual kind of descent from the representational, I think, which is happening in various parts of the world by then, from the late 19th century onwards. So it's really freeing up the song from the bounds of the representational, whether the representational here even means something as basic as the form of the song itself. Even the form of the song, which then represents, when you hear it, that's a song, it represents itself, even that is being cast aside.
You know, there's a fascinating passage on page 216, among so many fascinating passages, where there's a disquisition by yourself on the notion of the improvisational. And I think it would come quite naturally, follow on quite naturally from what you've just been saying about this representation of a spiritual aspect to things, and almost a kind of triumph over time, which so much great art represents. Would you mind reading us a piece from the book?
Sure.
I was recommending page 2016 and maybe on to 17.
Yes. Yeah.
As far as you'd like to go.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me.
Thank you. So I'm just going to read out this bit about improvisation, because the word keeps coming up in connection to music, in connection to jazz, in connection to Indian classical music. It's said that Indian classical music is improvisational. But what's meant by improvisation? There's no word in the Indian languages that corresponds exactly with the term or idea. There's alankar and sringar, meaning elaboration and ornamentation. I have to also add there's badhat, which means development. Sringar is part of the vocabulary of Kathak dance. It refers to a woman, possibly Radha, doing her toilette. She's preparing to meet her lover, possibly Krishna. The dancer's gestures enact Sringar, adorning herself, converge with the idea that making up, make-believe, and the gestures of improvisation are inherent in everyday practices. Radha's Sringar in Kathak dance is a manifestation of Abhinaya's urge to adorn, Abhinaya being the form in which a story is being told through gestures in Kathak dance. Abhinaya's urge to adorn, to develop on. But I've also heard musicians speak of elaboration in Khayal or Tumri, that is, singing a phrase in 2 or 3 different ways, as Sringar. There's no word for improvisation because improvisation is music. The fact that music could be otherwise would have been news to an 18th century performer in India. In Hindustani classical music, improvisation is deferral. If a raga is a cluster of progressions and interrelationships, I, as a performer, will delay, without disfiguring the raga's form, a straightforward portrayal of these interrelationships for as long as possible. If I'm supposed to ascend the notes of Yaman and then return to the sa, which is the tonic, in this way, ni, re, ga, re, sa, I will procrastinate, maybe sing ni, re, ga, ni, re, ni, re, ga, re, sa. If I'm to ascend the sharp fourth, returning to the tonic like this, ni, re, ga, re, ma, ga, re, sa, I might sing ni, re, ga, re, ma, ga, re, ni, re, ga, re, sa instead. I'll delay the expected. The audience will await the expected but partake intensely of the delay. I won't come to the point. My not coming to the point will be synonymous with the pleasure of improvisation. People have asked me, in what way does being a musician affect your writing? Or is the form of your novel Afternoon Rag based on the Raga? I've evaded these questions as I don't have an answer. Feebly, I repeat what's true. I don't remember I'm a singer when I write. I don't remember I'm a writer when I sing. But after 3 decades, I see at least one link. I'm told I have a tendency not to come to the point. Some Indian critics in particular have taken me to task for this. The Anglophone Indian in the last 30 years has been impatient with digression unless it's connected to identity. That is, we Indians always digress. Going off point as a means to seeking beauty isn't of interest, although that's what improvisation in Hindustani classical music is. When I was writing my first novel between 1986 and 1988, I invoked a parallel with improvisation without knowing it. I was describing a walk taken in Calcutta by a man with his 2 sons and his nephew from Bombay during a power cut in the evening. The nephew, Shondip, is drawn to the semi-visible houses. The narrator knows already that Shondip's distraction is bound to frustrate a certain kind of reader. And I quote, "But why did these houses, for instance that one with the tall ornate iron gates and a watchman dozing on a stool, which gave the impression that the family had valuables locked away inside, or that other one with the small porch and the painted door, which gave the impression that whenever there was a feast or a wedding, all the relatives would be invited, and there would be so many relatives that some of them, probably the young men and women, would be sitting bunched together on the cramped porch because there would be no more space inside, talking eloquently about something that didn't really require eloquence, laughing uproariously at a joke that wasn't really very funny, or this next house with an old man relaxing in his easy chair on the veranda, fanning himself with a local Sunday newspaper, or this small shabby house with the girl Shondip glimpsed through a window sitting in a bare, ill-furnished room, memorizing a text by candlelight, repeating suffixes and prefixes from a Bengali grammar over and over to herself. Why did these houses seem to suggest that an infinitely interesting story might be woven around them? And yet the story would never be a satisfying one because the writer, like Shundip, would be too caught up in jotting down the irrelevances and digressions that make up lives and the life of a city rather than a good story, till the reader would shout, "Come to the point," and there would be no point except the girl memorizing the rules of grammar, the old man in the easy chair fanning himself, and the house with the small empty porch which was crowded paradoxically with many memories and possibilities. The real story with its beginning, middle, and conclusion would never be told because it did not exist. End of quote. Those less in sympathy with khayal, this is the genre I was singing now, may cry, "Come to the point." But those acquainted with alap see evasion as the principal activity of creation.
You know, as you speak there, Amit, that's such a typically beautiful passage from the book. I was thinking, you know, deferral is it's clearly not something that we've only recently come up with. But it is a feature of modernism, and I include when I use the word modernism, you know, I think of some of the great modernists like Lawrence Stern, who predated the modern era, but was at his heart what we think of as a modernist. I mean, it's a fascinating idea that we've come to a point where we accept that we're never going to get to a point because there is no point that is achievable.
True. But I
That's
think
the heart of this, isn't it?
it is. It is. I think it's worth reminding, ourselves about the kind of creative significance of deferral, because in the last 20 years, we've lived in an age where we are being urged to come to the point as writers, as journalists, as maybe as musicians. I mean, the point takes on the form of it takes on many forms, including theme, of course, and the just how much can be achieved through prevarication in terms of a tradition, of a body of work, of innovations to do with genre, is and give deep pleasure, give much deeper pleasure than the point which is not pleasure giving. Coming to the point is not pleasure giving. Can then that truth can take us towards, in terms of pleasure. The prevarication being a kind of opening up to the expansion of pleasure. I think it's, and thinking about that in a very specific, nuanced, detailed way, rather than in a theoretical way, because we do, of course, think about pleasure and the erotics of pleasure in a theoretical way. But these forms, I think, bring, as we become acquainted with them, bring to us materially how it actually works, how prevarication actually works, how pleasure works.
Amit, I'm seeing a signal here. Please forgive me, which your image has disappeared. Is there any way that you or
Battery.
your colleague could
Shambit,
actually plug in
image has
the
disappeared.
the
Something to do with
machine?
battery.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing here, and we would really love to hear some more from you. So we'd love to get your battery restored.
Yeah, he's on the job.
Okay, well, we can hear you, which is something. And one of the things when we get ourselves reconnected, as it were, we were hoping to hear another piece of music, and then there'll be an opportunity for Q&A. And by the way, I would love to encourage our participants to think about. Excellent, lovely to see you again. I would encourage our participants to put their Q&A in their questions, and I hope you'll have some in the Q&A, because that's where they love to be. So Amit, you will perhaps play a piece for us. Are you going to play or sing, or is there a distinction?
I'll do a combination of both.
Okay, good, excellent, lovely. And what are we looking at here?
So what we're looking at here is part of my ongoing project, which began in 2005, and it was called. This is, by the way, Shambit Kundu, who's doing this wonderful job as far as sound is concerned.
We're very grateful to you.
Sorry?
We're very grateful to him.
Yes, we are. So one day, when I began to listen to Western music again, the music I'd grown up with in a conscious way, because other music I grew up with my mother singing Tagore songs, maybe even the Indian Raga, I grew up unconsciously with. But consciously I was listening to, as I said, The Who and Jimi Hendrix and all of that. And then when I got into the Indian music, I mean, practicing, but also the zeal of the convert meant that I just left all of that behind. My record collection, everything I'd been listening to, the guitar, all of that, because I was on my way to becoming a Canadian singer-songwriter, and then that got interrupted by my discovery of Khayal. So 16 years in Britain, I did not listen to everything that was waiting for me when I arrived there. Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Lionel Richie, Duran Duran. I shut them all out, and I practiced Indian classical music. And after I came back in 1999 to India, I began to listen to Jimi Hendrix again, posthumously released recordings of him playing the blues, and I began to hear doubly. So I began to hear some Indian ragas in the blues and the bent notes as well. And as when that was happening, when I was singing this rag, which I sang this morning, Gujri Todi, I heard the riff to Leila in some of the. Just go back to that for a second. Sa re ga ma da ni da ni da ma da ma da ni da ma da ni da ma da. When I sang that, I thought that sounds like the riff to Leila, and that's how this ambition at that point to kind of move between musical idioms, move between memories that had formed me, germinated, but took shape in the form of a project called This Is Not Fusion, which became many things beyond and above what I've just described right now, which is blues, raga, kind of segues. But what I'm going to perform now is something that I haven't recorded yet. I mean, there are 2 CDs. This Is Not Fusion, Found Music, which collect my kind of compositions or experiments in the genre that I've described. But this one has not been recorded yet. It's Across the Universe, the Beatles, John Lennon, and what I'm doing is incorporating Rageshri, not because I thought one day that, I must bring in Rageshri over here, but because one day I suddenly heard the one in the other. So I'll try and perform that. Is the guitar audible? Usually I don't play the guitar while singing this kind of music. Somebody else does it because it's difficult to improvise. But anyway, I'm going to try. This one I've got used to it. So I'm going to be singing the notes of Rageshri to begin with. Ma 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 ga ma re re sa sa ni da ni sa sa ni da ni sa ga ma re re sa 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 ma ma ga ga ma re re sa ni da ni sa ga ma re re sa sa ni da ni sa ga ma re re sa ma ma ga mama da da ni ni da ni da ma ga ma re re sa ni da ni sa ga ma re re sa ma ma ga da da ni da sa ni da ni da ma ga ma ni da ni da ma ga ma ni da ma ga ma re re sa ma ma ga ni da sa ni da ni da ma ga ma ni da sa ni da ma ga ma re sa ma ma ga ni sa ni da ni sa ni da ma ga ma ni da ma ga ma re sa ma ma ga. Jai Guru Deva, Jai Guru Deva, Om. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Jai Guru Deva, Jai Guru Deva. tadani da magama ni da ni da magama ni da sa sa ni da gama re sa 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 mama ga tadani dadani 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 dani 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 da sa ni dadani da magama ni da sa ni dadani da magama mama re sa 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 mama ga ma 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 de ma 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 ga Jai Guru Deva Jai Guru Deva Jai Guru Deva.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
What a
Paul.
treat. Beautiful. Listen, we have a couple of questions, if you would entertain them. Amit, let me see if I can read this. This is from Tyson T. Can you talk about virtuosity? Abdul Karim Khan, stretching or slowing time is a major innovation that you point to. This slowness and delay or deferral, so the elap seems to be the thing, but from, is that, am I reading that correct? Yes, it seems to be the thing, but sorry, I'm an old man and I can barely read, but from a commoner listener's perspective, this can often seem to descend into virtuosic acrobatics. Can we have just more elap?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tyson might be referring to the fact that the alap is the most expressive part of khayal, where you know we sort of allow for an unnaturally slow kind of tempo, and we also slow down the notes to kind of incredible sort of exploration of their nuances in the context of their rag, interrelationships, one note leading to the other, a set of notes leading to the other. And can I just very quickly... Sorry, that was my electric tabla. I just want to show you one thing because we're talking about alap.
Alap, yes.
So I want to show you this, the slowing down that I'm talking about. It's easy to do because I have the electric tabla here. So,
Right.
Sorry, some funny sounds coming through, but this is Vilambit, sorry, this is fast ektal, drut ektal. Ektal, the bowls that the tabla is playing, the syllables that the tabla is playing. Dhin dhin dhagatika tunna katta dhagatika dhinna. Dhin dhin dhagatika tunna katta dhagatika dhinna. Slow down. Dhin dhin dhage tirikata dhuna katta dhage tirikata dhina na dhin. Now, how is it meant to be heard? This is how it's meant to be heard. Din din dagatikatun nakatta dagatikatunda. Can you hear that? Let's slow it down to what happened with what we might call modernism. Din. Din. So, the dhage, this is dhage. Ti, ra, ka, ta, tu. So what I'm saying is, I'm not going to play the whole thing, the whole cycle, is that no one who hears this, no one who would have heard this kind of slowed down version for the first time would have recognized it for what it was. And I remember first listening to Indian classical music, what he seems to be playing a 4/4 beat, but what exactly is going on? Where does this end? You know. So what Tyson is referring to is the kind of the opening up over here of minute forms of expression. Virtuoso like stuff happens.
We've lost you there, Amit. We've lost your sound. Amit, if you can hear me. Amit?
It also appears to be, oh no, you can see he's moving.
Amit, we have lost your sound, unfortunately. Can you hear me? We have a bad connection again. Yeah, we can't hear you. Terribly sorry. Is your collaborator technician with you? Seems not to be able to hear us either.
Give it another minute or something here and see if they can.
We can't hear you, I'm afraid, Amit, unfortunately, which is a pity because we'd love to hear you.
Got more good questions.
Yeah.
Is he saying goodbye? So
I'm not quite sure. Rick, what would you like to do here?
I think, I don't know if well, see if, I guess he's not hearing us either. Well, there may be his little indicator. No, we're still not hearing him. Here comes Karen. I think she's maybe got something. I would probably have to just wind this down.
Yeah.
What's Karen saying? Oh, yeah. Well, with Karen, we know that he knows that. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, here he is.
Now you can hear me?
Now we can hear you, yes.
That's amazing. Okay.
Okay, it's okay. It's this is the modern world. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Should we try another question?
Yeah.
So what do we see? We have from K. Akwati, in your wonderful book, you refer a lot to, I assume, to the role of Khayal in the Raga. Was there any influence on the development of the Raga from Arabic Persian music, like the Magam, for example? And that's from K. Akwat, New York. Did you hear me?
I could hear you. I could hear you.
And does that the question mean anything to you?
Khayal is an Arabic word, but you know, I mean, India for a long time has been, you know, a mix of cultures at a very profound level. So by the time you know, the Khayal began to be developed as a form, this is cross-fertilization with cultures from different parts of the world and Muslim cultures, which is a very weak way of kind of describing the various kinds of influences coming in from the outside into India from the 11th or 12th century onwards. I mean, would have been well enough in place for Khayal to be a word that here is being suggestively and playfully used. Because it means it means a whole lot of things: imagination, thought, whim, idea, mood. I'm not an authority on Arab music, you know, and its history. There are commonalities, but to do with modulations, which you can even hear in the muezzin's call, you know, which has a wonderful beauty to it. But the rag and tal, which is the time cycles, you know, the rhythmic time cycles, like the one I played right now on the tabla, those are peculiar developments within India, and I don't think they have a correspondence anywhere.
Right.
They don't. I haven't heard anything corresponding really to these particular developments.
Yeah, we're coming near the end of our time, but there is a question here from Robin, which might sort of bleed in and out of that last one. Do you find a connection with vocals in flamenco?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, uh, I was in conversation with the music critic Ben Ratcliffe, who writes for used to write, maybe still does, for the New York Times, about this book. And he sent me a piece he had written on virtuosity, again, as it happens, connecting to the first question or an earlier one. And he said, I wish I had read this particular thing you'd written about the Pakistani singer Salamat Ali Khan before I wrote this piece. But he sent me something which had links to flamenco singers from, the 50s or whenever. I mean, some time ago. And neither of them is alive. They're both called Nina. Nina de Pueblo, Nina something or the other. I'm sorry that I can't remember their names right now. I'm very recently acquainted with them. When I was listening to Nina, the one with the glasses, it was very beautiful what she was singing, and I noticed some kind of resemblances with certain forms of virtuosity in Indian vocal music, but also with the shruti, which is the slightly undulating note. It's not vibrato. It suggests the next note or another note. When I was listening to this, I thought it's amazing that there are these commonalities, but it's also amazing that in Indian music, that very early on, a millennium ago, they categorized these things that are happening to the notes. That is, it's a culture which has made a category out of the shruti. It's not just something that's happening and handed down by tradition. It's being theorized, and it has been theorized for 1,000 years. So people are aware of this as a theoretical point, but also as something that really happens in a performance. This undulating note, that they've theorized it, and theorized it a long time ago. I thought, did someone theorize this in flamenco? Did that happen? I just find, yeah, it's wonderful flamenco singing. There are commonalities, but there's a great deal of theoretical work and other kinds of development in Indian music, some of them quite recent, although it all sounds very ancient and immemorial, which make it really something. It's really fascinating.
Thank you so much, Amit, for getting up so early in the morning there, and for being so open to our questions, and for playing and reading, singing so beautifully. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. It was great to see you again, as ever.
We'll see you soon. Here comes Rick.
And to say to both of you, thank you so much. I mean, thank you, Paul, for staying up to do this. And it's been a pleasure and delight to hear you. And Amit, you and actually Shambhita and others there who I think you're probably not the only ones in your household up at this hour because of what you're doing. So we thank them. Thank the morning birds I'm hearing too outside your window.
Yeah,
I recognize and miss those bird sounds there where you are. And everyone here has enjoyed this. We certainly, if those of you who have not yet gotten Amit's book, Finding the Raga, we have it at Elliott Bay. And even more than anything, we just hope, Amit, you and others there are able to stay healthy and safe. And we wish the best for everyone there. It's awful.
Thank you.
Horrific what's going on there and elsewhere in India. And maybe the whole world's had some of this, but you're having it really seriously now. So do take care.
Yeah.
And we appreciate this even more in a way for you to have stepped out of that to share this with us. The music, the words, and the book, all of it. So hopefully to see you again soon. So one side you will see each other. I'll try and get back to Calcutta or wherever we might meet. But
absolutely.
Yes, and thank
Paul,
you.
you must come as well.
Love to.
It's high time.
You
Yeah.
haven't been there, you've got it's quite a place to go to. Yes, and thank you all, because I know people here are here from all over at different time zones and everything. So thank you all, and take care. And thank you, Amit. We'll see you.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, folks.
Yep.
Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye now.